everybody, it's Brianna Henneke-Hodges. I am super excited to be here with the Dennis Williams from Hatboro and Horsham High School in Pennsylvania. I cannot wait for you to learn a little bit about him. But before we get started, just want to welcome you into Future Ready Schools podcast of learning through uncertainty, and we're going to get things rocking and rolling. But first and foremost, I want to say again, thank you to Dennis Williams, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Dennis. Where are you from? Who do you serve? All that good stuff.
Sure. Thanks, Bree. Appreciate the opportunity to be with everybody today. And thanks for the opportunity to kind of talk about how things are going. My name is Dennis Williams, Jr. I am the principal at Hatboro Horsham High School. We are located in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. We are about 15 to 20 miles outside of the city of Philadelphia. So we are a suburban school. We are a school district of about 4,600 students, 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school. About 1,300, 1,400 kids, 1,367 to be exact, at our high school. And I'm also a graduate of this high school. So I tell people all the time that one of the inmates is running the asylum. So there's not too much they can get away with because I've been there and I've done it. So thanks.
I love it. I love it. Well, and I would be remiss if I did not admit that I have gotten to witness the greatness of Hatboro Horsham in person. And I think so highly of your school and all the things that you do there. It is just, if anybody has the opportunity to come visit you, I would recommend it, because it's a great example of heartfelt leadership. I mean, I think, you and I share that in common of what it's like to return to a school district that kind of shaped you and molded you. And it's an interesting kind of experience to flip that around. But at the same time, you exude it, you embody it. And I'm just in awe of your leadership there. So
thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome. All right. With that said, let's jump into this, because it can't always be roses, right? Like, we understand that we are in, full year two of navigating some of these uncertainties. And that said, there's been a lot of challenges that have come in. So I would love for you to share with us a challenge that you personally kind of handled there or encountered through some of the times that we've had through the COVID-19 pandemic, and then help us understand maybe a strategy or two that you found useful in adapting to that challenge.
Sure. There are a number of challenges. We know that as leaders. But I think it's important to identify the ones that will provide the most added value, right? So for us as a building, we knew coming back in, I knew as a leader and my leadership team, just to give you some background and to kind of frame things for you. So we are a comprehensive high school, grades 9 through 12. About 50% of my kids have never been in my building, right? When you think about our freshman class who has not been in school or had not been necessarily in the building for March 13th, we only had about 65% of our students who came back to us last year as we were hybrid. So we've got a good amount of kids who haven't stepped foot in our building. So the culture looks a little different. The climate of our building, the ability to kind of really have kids understand some of the expectations and the daily routines was going to be a struggle. So we knew that going in. So we talk a little bit about flexibility, and part of that flexibility has to do with discipline. And that, I know that seems crazy to start with that as a topic, right? But we know that if kids don't feel safe physically, if kids don't feel safe emotionally, and as if they feel like you don't have their best interest in mind, they will shut down academically, right? So we knew that we had to be flexible in terms of how we handled things, in terms of kids who were violating expectations, violating guidelines and rules as we have it. Because for some of them, they don't get it. They didn't know. They didn't understand. So as a staff, one of the things that we've done this year, my administrative team and I, we are actually working through a restorative practice process. Working with our staff in terms of how do you develop that classroom culture, that building culture, and not always looking to detentions and other punitive ways to address issues, right? We know as leaders there's a significant difference between punishment and discipline, right? So working through our staff with that. And one of the things that we've done this year is actually we've engaged in a full building-wide PLC. So my administrative team and we are facilitating 40 teachers at a time. I have about 140 teachers, 430 teachers, 40 teachers at a time over a 6-week period. And we're working through the book, Hacking Student Discipline. And it has been so cool to really hear from both veteran teachers and new teachers, novice teachers, their thoughts and philosophy and perspectives on discipline, right? And how discipline should be handled. And it's interesting because part of the things that we've been dealing with and focusing on are around masking protocols, right? I mean, we got high school kids. There are some districts around us where there are no masking guidelines. We have them. So working with teachers in terms of setting that classroom environment and that climate and that structure, it's been really cool. And I think our students have actually benefited as well. Just had a conversation with a student 2 days ago who, under the old guidelines, probably would have suspended, right? Would have been suspended for the behavior. However, I actually held a restorative conference with that student and the teacher. Student breaks down crying. Teacher feels differently about how they handled it. We have a great conversation. The two of them ate lunch. So it's those kinds of things that I think when we prepare, there's going to be issues, there's going to be struggles. Kids are coming back into the system for the first time in a very long time. How can we prepare? How can we promote a different type of relationship? And it's been really, really positive.
I think that's so important to process, right? Because I think that one of the things that we hear a lot is how different kids are feeling right now. And, with that, so many phrases come along, right? Of like, well, they just don't understand that we have rules here in school, or they just don't understand that this is how. You're right. They don't understand because there's been a change that's happened along the way. And I think, I love that phrase that you just said. Discipline is different than punishment, and discipline is something it's a part of our character that we strive for, that we want to be very disciplined in our character. We want to understand and have that framework for what is right in the right moment, what needs to, how can we adhere to that? And I just, that's such a good reminder. And I had an experience with my own personal child last night, where, those personal children that can get under your skin a little bit, right? And she had a long evening, a long day. We'd had a really long day, a long, tough day. And she just melted down at the end of the day. And, and it's that part where when she melts down as a 9-year-old, I melt down as a not 9-year-old, right? Like, I mean, I'm 42 and I'm losing my mind because she's losing her mind. And then and for what? Like, all it does is escalate, 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 escalate. And then you finally breathe and you have that time to like come back together. I didn't let up on my rule any more than, I didn't change my expectations. I breathed through it, and we, came together at the end, and it was so funny because at the end of the day, as I was tucking her in last night, she was like, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And she said, I just didn't know what to feel. I didn't know what to do. I was tired. I was hurting. I had all these different pieces, and I just didn't know how to put it all together. And I'm sorry that I showed you the way that I felt in the way that I did. And I was like, me too.
Because that is exactly what happens. And again, I, especially at the high school level, right? When you talk about issues that arise, ultimately those issues have to deal with some sort of disrespect. And oftentimes it may not necessarily be disrespect. At this level, sometimes we fail to allow our kids to communicate with us on what's happening, right? You violated our rules. Okay, so maybe kids don't understand that that's actually a rule, right? Like, there used to be an internal guideline around it. We wrestled with this too, and eventually we just let it go, and now it's beautiful. There's no issues, right? About wearing hats indoors, right? This generation, I got an 18-year-old daughter. Like, kids could care less about what we thought about wearing hats indoors. It has eliminated so many issues because now you're speaking their language, right? We've created rules in schools for so long that when you step back and take a look at them, some of them are kind of silly. And I think your point is perfect. Like, when we allow kids to communicate, what some of the issues are, then I think we would have a much better understanding of how to respond to them. And for years, schools we just haven't done that. And I'm guilty of it too. So this has been a real kind of breath of, listen, there are still issues, right? And there's still things that when something occurs, when a specific code of conduct violation occurs, you got to respond a certain way. But for the most part, it's been really refreshing to have these kinds of conversations with students and then watch our teachers have similar conversations without it turning into, defiance, insubordination. Like it's been good.
Well, and I know both of us are big why people, right? And I think that what I'm hearing you and your team are doing, because I don't want to say it's a have done, because I think it's a continually, it's a continual experience, is to reflect on what are our codes of conduct, what are our rules, are they a good rule, do they still have merit into what we're doing? Nobody's saying that there shouldn't be any rules. Nobody's saying that there shouldn't be frameworks or any of that stuff. But what we're saying is that you need to have something. If you choose to have this rule, then why is it in place? Because we all know the very first question that anybody's going to ask, most especially our high school kids and older, are us included in that, is, well, why is this important, right? And if we don't know why, we can't defend it and we can't support it. And it's really important to not just say cuz. So
because I said so, right? That's what at home, and even that really anymore. No, you're
Exactly. Well, so in addition to, doing these deep dives around discipline and kind of looking to that, how are you seeing, I mean, you shared 65% of your students were not, got to come back onto campus, but that leaves a huge chunk that's not out there. How has learning changed as you have kind of navigated these waters? I mean, that's a huge deal to take on a hybrid circumstance, to not see 50% of your students now that are coming in. So what does learning look like now at HHHS? I think I put in too many H's, but there you go.
Well, what was cool? Now, first of all, let me be clear. It is exciting to have kids back in the building and see them, face to face, mask to mask in our case, right? But what's been good is, first of all, if you're a teacher and like you actually like kids, last year sucked, right? It was horrible for you. You didn't have the type of relationships that you hope to build, students the ability to collaborate and so on. So the positive that came out of that, because there are some positives, we can talk about the pandemic and all of the negatives, there were a lot of those, but there are some positive game-changing strategies, tools, resources that came out of the last 21 months or 18 months, right? For us, it forced our teachers to be a little more agile and fluid in terms of planning and delivering instruction, right? Because you had no choice. You had to differentiate, especially in the hybrid model that we use. You had 9 students in front of you on Mondays and Wednesdays, and 13 of them were at home. And then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you had a different 8 or 9 kids in front of you. You had to be fluid. You had to be flexible. And that really showed in terms of the way that our teachers delivered instruction. Now, when you bring those kids back into the mix and you have the opportunity to work with them, that doesn't mean that the tools and strategies that you use go out the window. Well, now you can start to embed those things into your regular toolbox. And we've seen that. It's been cool to see some of the teachers use the technology that we provided, that our school board provided, to have some of those department instructional strategies, right? Where maybe the English department and the social studies department are going to get together via Teams, because we use Teams, we're a Microsoft Teams school, to communicate about something that they're reading or something that is of a current event that ties into something that's being read. In an era where movement within a building because of COVID restrictions and health and safety guidelines can potentially be an issue, our teachers are relying on some of the technology that got them through last year, where, when we came back to school, ultimately they were like, okay, so we're never using this stuff again, right? But it's been cool to actually see them pick some of those tools up. I can tell you one of the things that has been great for us, the types of relationships that our guidance counselors have been able to build with families, because ultimately, especially for our senior families, that whole post-secondary process and the college application process, ultimately those things are usually done before 3 o'clock, right? Because you got contract hours and counselors got to go, and kids are out at 3 o'clock and parents are still at work. What this pandemic did was it allowed our counselors to be meeting with families 6:30, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, where parents could be present. So you're having different kinds of conversations. That is something that has continued this year. Our counselors love it. Like, they never want to give it up now. From a collective bargaining agreement, we'll have to see what that looks like, right? But it has become a game changer for them. For us, in terms of club and activities, we have a very strong club and activity presence. So our students, 83% of our students, based on a survey that we did 2 years ago, participate in at least one club and activity. And I don't mean sport, right? So we've got close to 60 clubs and activities. What this has shown us is we can still run our clubs and activities virtually. We're still doing a lot face-to-face, but we've been able to do them virtually, which has limited some of the movement. We still provided $10,000 to the March of Dimes this last year through fundraising. We still fed this community, 100 families in this community, over the holidays, because our kids were still connecting virtually, and then coming in 2 days a week when they could to donate their services to raising canned food drives and to doing those things. So there's a lot that came out of it, and for us as a building who's moving to more of a deeper learning type of learning, and the idea of transfer, right? We talk all the time about content and how are we teaching kids to be critical thinkers and collaborative partners and solve complex problems and have that academic mindset. But to be able to transfer all of those things into everything that they encounter, whether it be academically or in life, period. Some of that got derailed last year, but we're in the process now of not derailed, it's slowed down, right? It's slowed down. But we're in the process now of getting back into that groove. And it's been really nice to see the way that our teachers adjusted last year, readjusted this year, and are taking the positives and kind of making them work into something that is beneficial for our kids, academically, socially, and emotionally.
Well, again, it kind of reminds me of your conversation around visiting your code of content. I mean, your conduct, you're really looking deeply into what are we asking our kids to do? What are our kids driving us to do, right? Like, how are they bringing community and relationships into this? What do they find most important and impactful? And how are they bringing that all together for school? Because that's they're re-engaging that why, and it's almost like they're showing that transfer to adults as opposed to adults trying to guide that, like they're bringing forward, hey, these are the things that we think are super, super important that we can't imagine, having our high school experience without. Okay, so that's going to bring me to my last question for you, which is, and this might be a tough one. So, if you need to think on it, you can, but I don't think it's going to be, honestly. What or who motivates you to put in the time and effort to reshape Learning BC, right? Like, so I like to call Learning BC, like learning before COVID, into our future ready learning. Like, how this is exhausting work. Like, nobody questions that whatsoever. There's a lot of time, a lot of effort that is going into reshaping this. Who or what keeps you at this? And especially at a time when we're all hitting the burnout stage more readily than we ever have. So that said.
Okay. That's a good question. That's a great question. What motivates me? I think is I live on this, on both the professional end and the personal end, right? I have a daughter who's a senior in high school. She's 18, just turned 18. She's a senior this year. And I've watched her navigate the high school system as an active honors AP level African-American female in a predominantly white school, right? So the conversations about coursework and academic level and, instructional strategies that teachers are using that attempt to engage kids, clubs, activities, that promote community service and service learning, discussions about race, cultural proficiency, equity. Those are conversations that I have both at home and at school. So for me, I get to see it a little bit differently. Seeing how our kids are trying to navigate high school, the things that are being thrown at them from both an academic standpoint, but also from a community standpoint, right? And just being good citizens. I think to me that has kind of changed the way that I lead, the way that the types of conversations that I have with my staff, and definitely changes the conversations that I have with students. So to me, that future ready piece drives me, because it's the ability for kids to be able to adapt, to integrate, whether that be integrating new technologies that assist in student success. This pandemic showed us the power of resources, right? Connectivity and how those resources are used that make a difference in the experience of students. And as educational leaders, we need to be mindful of the way that our kids experience school, and whether we're providing a safe and physically, emotionally strong place for kids to develop. This is the last stop, right? I've got 4 years with kids. This is a little different than elementary, where I can potentially watch a kid grow from K to 5 or K to 6, depending on your district. I've got 4 years with kids, and I know that for some of our kids, it's a cakewalk. They don't need us, right? Others, they're almost there, and they need us to help them get refined before they hit the real world. But then there's others who they can't survive without us. And I think if we keep those things in mind, that pressure, that challenge, that responsibility, like, those are the things that keep me going.
What an incredible reminder that we're after creating future ready experiences for our students, not to replicate what we experienced as as educators. We're not after replicating our own past. Instead, we're after creating those future ready experiences. And it's such a, I see it in the work that you share. I see it in the work that you do every single day. And I think it's such an important reminder, especially at that high school level. I love my high school peeps that we have a tendency to try to create a box around our learning in high school. And we try to say, like, we have so much information that we only have 4 years. We only have this one time. We have all the stuff that we're trying to get into them. And the fact of the matter is that the best gift that we can give them is how to navigate this and apply this, like you said, integrate this into their futures, instead of forcing them to memorize all of the stuff that happened a long time ago.
I tell the kids all the time, been 35 years. I haven't used Algebra 2 yet. Right? I mean, not math.
It's not a dig. It's not a dig at Algebra 2, right? Like, so what did Algebra 2 teach us? It taught us how to apply creative solutions. Those are the things. Like, how do we take those pieces and bring purpose to them, instead of just, copy page 27, do the odd numbers, right? How do we help really kind of bring that forward? And I'm seeing that in all the work that you do. So thank you so much for spending some time with us today and sharing all of the incredible work that you guys are doing up there in the PA. And I just want to say again, a quick thanks to you for sharing your thoughts and your expertise. For everybody out there listening, we appreciate you. Again, it's been a Future Ready podcast, Future Ready Schools podcast of Learning Through Uncertainty. I'm Brianna Hodges and Dennis Williams. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Bri. Appreciate it. Have a great one, everyone.
Despite our good intentions, 2020 helped us clearly see that while each day brings a multitude of uncertainties, future-ready leaders are leaning into those opportunities, leading necessary changes to address inequities and learning through uncertainty. Learning Through Uncertainty is hosted by me, Brianna Henneke Hodges, National Faculty for Future Ready Schools. In each episode, we'll connect with Future Ready instructional leaders and learners as they share their expertise, advice, and experience reimagining teaching and learning to better suit today's learners with tomorrow's techniques. Together, we'll reimagine possibilities, renew communities, and reinvigorate pedagogical practices. Together, we'll redesign environments, recalibrate services, and reconnect purpose, passion, and practice. Subscribe and listen to Learning Through Uncertainty wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Learning Through Uncertainty and Future Ready Schools are projects of All for Ed, because together we're better, and together we're future ready.